The group of people who is attracted to a set of ideas is not random. Like, there's going to be certain things that attract people to certain idea clusters. And some of those might actually tap into the person's frustrations in their own life, their pathologies, like their dark side. And other reasons people might be attracted to a set of ideas are much more generous and good, and like coming from a good place of trying to solve real problems in the world. And these are sort of mixed together, like the wheat and the chaff. So if you look at any group of people attracted to a certain set of ideas, it's like a mixture. Like for some people, it's like 50% pathological and 50% good. For other people, it's like 0% pathological or 5% pathological. And I know this is going to sound contradictory given the title of the video and what I'm talking about here. But I actually think part of the problem we're having with sense-making and understanding across difference is the fact that people are psychologizing the other. They're sort of looking at the group of people attracted to an idea, and they're like, ooh, look at that pathology. And that's stopping people from actually delving deep into the set of ideas that these people are touting. I think that's one problem going on. But I don't think this is contradictory because I'm going to flesh out what I think is going on, including talking a little bit about the pathologies that attract people to ideas. But I'm not doing this to shut down listening to them. I'm doing this to sort of show what's going on in the landscape of sense-making and to try to solve a particular problem that I'm seeing as I'm delving into the philosophy and the literature behind different groups who are perhaps at odds with each other. And the way I'm sort of thinking about this is we have these pyramids of ideas, where at the top of the pyramid is symbols and slogans that are sort of watered down, simplistic versions of the ideas deeper in the pyramid, where the bottom of the pyramid is like the most complex ideas in that idea set. And what I'm finding as I'm delving into different pyramids is that there's some actual ideas at the bottoms of some of these pyramids that are in common with each other, where I can say, actually, these people and these people, even though they're at odds with each other, if they took the time to go deep inside the pyramid, they would discover there are actual major points of potential collaboration. But they're not collaborating because they're sort of each only seeing the tip of the iceberg, might be a good analogy, of the other group, which is slogans and symbols. And some of those actually are valid symbols of things that have more depth and others are not. But then they see these and they attach these to these people, and they only see the negative parts of why these people are attracted to these ideas. And it just stops the conversation from connecting ideas across pyramids where it's like, actually, there is major commonality in these groups. So where I'm going with this, I'd like to talk a little bit about why pathologies might be part of the story that attracts people to idea clusters. And then I want to talk about the nature of the pyramid and the ideas and the connection perhaps between the slogans and symbols and the deeper ideas. And I want to explain why there can be both good and bad actors both at the top of the pyramid and at the bottom of the pyramid. And then I want to flesh out the problem of psychologizing the other and why that's causing so much chaos. And then I want to sketch out what are some solutions to this problem. So first, what do I mean when I say pathologies can attract people to ideas? And maybe pathologies seems a little bit overly dramatic, but I couldn't come up with a better word for this. This is sort of the situation where people have their own issues that might be related to their shadow side or their dark side or their character flaws. And sometimes people will project their frustrations with their own life and their own interpersonal reactions and their own failed hopes and dreams. They'll project those onto a more societal structure of ideas because there's something about the way the human brain works such that people can't always see their own issues. Like, they're blind to their own issues, but they can sometimes see their own issues in other people, or they can sometimes take what's resentment in their own hearts and sort of project it where it doesn't belong, or maybe where it does belong. Like, that's just a natural thing. And if you look at Jonathan Haidt's framework of the brain, where you have an elephant and a rider, and the elephant is just attracted to things and it has its own desires, which might be carnal, or there might be all kinds of reasons for the elephant to want what it wants. And the rider is the critical thinking part of the brain. But one of the rider's main tasks in Jonathan Haidt's framework is to be the PR person for the elephant, to justify what the elephant wants. Like, the elephant walks around being attracted to things and wanting things. And the rider has to use its brain to come up with reasons why that's actually an appropriate thing to be attracted to. And I think that maps pretty well onto this situation, where it is absolutely true that in almost every idea cluster, the group attracted is not representative. In fact, the types of people overly represented in this group will be the types of people whose elephants are attracted to this idea set for reasons that may have nothing to do with the validity of the ideas. So let's think about the nature of an idea cluster and the difference between the top and the bottom. And I think the bottom is sort of the fully fleshed out philosophers and thinkers who are really wrestling carefully and deeply with this idea. They don't all agree with each other, but they might be sort of in the same cluster. And at the top, there are going to be symbols and words and slogans, and sometimes even people who represent the ideas at the bottom. And I think if you look at somebody who's using some of the sloganeering language at the top, that's not always a bad thing. I think for some of those people, actually, the slogan or the word is just a really fast way of referring to a really deep idea that person actually does understand. And by boiling that whole concept down to a slogan or a word, they can just talk about that idea more easily. So I'm not going to say that slogans or symbols are necessarily bad things. Like, slogans and words in this category include things like free speech or capitalism or socialized medicine. They include things like Bitcoin and degrowth and the Constitution. Like, that word or phrase refers to a really complex idea set in all of those cases. Like, all of those ideas are slogans that represent something that has a much bigger base of a background, if you want to understand what people mean when they use that language. And when we consider the whole pyramid, we have to acknowledge that ideas are tools and are often used as tools. And if they're used against other people, those tools can feel like weapons to shut them down and weapons to stop hearing the good points that those other people have who may have critiques of some of these ideas. And I want to make the case that there can be good people and bad people, both at the top and at the bottom of one of these pyramids. Now, of course, to be a deep thinker, you can't just stay at the top and use the symbols without going deeper into the ideas. So I think any clear thinker on these issues is going to have gone a little bit deep into this pyramid. But just because someone mainly uses the slogans and symbols doesn't necessarily mean they're pathological. It could be that they have a surface understanding. They're not engaging deeply with this set of ideas. But maybe they view their role as being like someone who's a worker bee in some cause where they can contribute by coding or by building communities and bringing people together, and that's their contribution. They're not like a philosopher by nature, but they can have a really positive role. And to do the work they need to do, they may need some language that is vetted by people who are thinking more deeply about the ideas. So there can be good people who are sloganeering. Now, I think we all know that there can be really bad people who just sort of lob onto the sloganeering to use it as weapons to sort of, get out whatever animosity and hatred they have in their hearts. Like, that's something that I think is true at the top of many pyramids. But there can also be people who are at the bottom of the pyramids who understand the depth of the philosophy, but the reason they went down to the bottom is for a pathological reason, and they haven't sifted through the resentment and the the projection that's in their own hearts leading them to the bottom of this idea set. So there can be bad people at the top and bottom. And just to be clear, I don't believe in good people and bad people. I believe everyone's sort of a mixture, but sometimes I talk like that to simplify ideas. And of course, there can be really good thinkers who are at the bottom of the pyramid. I think usually when that happens, the good thinkers are engaging meaningfully with idea pyramids that are not their own. And one more weird thing about the top of the pyramid is sometimes I think people, like this includes philosophers or it includes public figures, can get lumped in as symbols at the top of a pyramid where people are referring to that person in a way that doesn't actually capture the depth of their ideas, but it's just sort of like, oh, that's a slogan that we use to sort of represent a bigger set of ideas. And that's kind of a weird thing because people are not characters. People are real. And some of the people who have become symbols and slogans are dead. But I can't imagine being a live person and kind of having the experience of becoming a symbol rather than having people actually engage with the depth of your ideas. That sounds horrible to me. Now, what's wrong with psychologizing about people in your outgroup? And I think what's wrong with it is not that it's false. It's not that there are no people with pathological reasons to be attracted to this idea. Because that's going to be true in many, many of these clusters. Like, if you look at the people attracted, the loudest, and certainly the ones who are going to sort of rise to the top of social media algorithms, may actually have really pathological reasons behind that attraction. The problem with it has to do with the needless animosity that it creates between groups. Because people in one idea cluster are going to experience people in other idea clusters saying, no, that's completely wrong because you have that person where 50% of their attraction is due to their pathology. And they sort of paint everybody who's looking into this idea set with that pathology. They assume if you're attracted to this idea, or if you're using certain slogans and symbols, that you must have that pathology. And that just shuts conversations down. Like, essentially, people in other groups are projecting the pathology unfairly onto a lot of people in the group. And most people will not engage at that point. They'll just be like, okay, you just painted my character according to someone who happens to like the same ideas or use the same language as me. I'm not going to engage with somebody who does that. And to a large degree, I think that is the correct response when someone psychologizes an entire group of people around an entire idea cluster. Like, that person is not acting in good faith. Even if they are correct about a subset of these people, that is bad faith. So what is the solution here? And I actually do think we need sense-making spaces that are way healthier than current social media. And I don't see enough of those popping up. And those sense-making spaces are going to have structure, like rules about what's okay and not okay. They're going to have, institutions like roles, rules, expectations, enforcement mechanisms. I do think some of those may need to be digital sense-making spaces. But I also think there has to be an in-person element for some of these conversations to happen. I think a lot of the ideas you can't get unless you've kind of marinated with someone you care about who thinks about those ideas. So some combination of in-person and digital. And then to participate in some of those spaces, I think it's important to be aware of what are the symbols and slogans and how are those understood. How are those reacted to by people in different clusters? Because to develop the kind of trust where you're actually going to learn to understand someone else, you have to avoid the stereotypes that get constantly flung at those people based on their understanding of their own symbols and slogans, based on their experience with your symbols and slogans. And one of the goals of that sense-making would be to recognize, actually, this idea is really important and it is worth sifting through the ugliness up here to get to this idea. Like, that's an idea that more people need to understand and more people need to wrestle with. But a lot of times, if you were to bring up this idea to someone in a different idea pyramid, their reaction is going to be, every time that word or slogan or idea is used, it is used to shut me down and used as a way of saying, I'm not going to listen to your ideas, or I'm going to mischaracterize you in an unfair way. If that's every experience I've had with this idea is in that category, then that person is going to have a really, really difficult time listening and paying attention with a clear enough mind to really understand this important idea. And to be in such a sense-making cluster, you do have to be willing to sort of go deeper, even when you're going to encounter some pathology along the way. Like, you're going to read a book and it's going to have some really great ideas mixed with things that are pathological in the way that is hostile to you, or in a way that is not good thinking. To go deep in these ideas, both you have to commit to, okay, I'm willing to put up with a little bit of pathology to get to the interesting ideas in that idea cluster. But also, I'm willing to set aside the use of certain words that are convenient, that are great representations of my ideas, because I understand that those ideas have been weaponized in a way that makes the conversation harder across difference.